Hi everyone, Michael here. Today I want to discuss the debate between the Civic nationalists and the Ethno nationalists. Let's go. Okay, so I wanted to clarify what I believe is the correct position on this debate. And the reason I bring this up is because Tommy Robinson has just been released from prison. And on Twitter, I saw someone commented a common accusation. And they're saying, I hope Tommy's realised that the debate's moved on now and that the Civic nationalist position's stupid and that not anybody can become English. But the problem I have with this is I think a lot of people are misrepresenting Tommy's position, which I actually share, and I am not necessarily a Civ-nat or an Ethno-nat. I'm in between. And just because Tommy Robinson has said before that he has no problem with good people who assimilate doesn't mean that he believes everybody who comes is native English or they can be British. Now, ethnically, nobody can come into this land and be ethnically English. You know, just like I can't get a citizenship in Nigeria, that doesn't mean that I am Nigerian. What can happen is people can move to other countries and assimilate, and they can become citizens, and then they can gradually become more assimilated. So for an example, if I was in Nigeria and I married a Nigerian woman and had children, then my children would be ethnically half English, half Nigerian. So my children are now Nigerian. And if I live there and I adopt all the culture, then I'm still an Englishman, but I have successfully assimilated and my children are now Nigerian. So that is what successful assimilation, that's been the history of humanity. People have always moved around, and that's why we're the Anglo-Saxons, because people have always been moving around and there's always been many fights and wars and tribes. You know, in Africa, there's been tribes always at war, and people have always moved around trying to take over certain places. And it is very confusing because, for an example, obviously white people went to South Africa and somewhat colonized it, if that's the way people look at it. And I personally believe people should stay where they are. They don't need to go around colonizing and taking over other places. But on that subject, a lot of black South Africans are saying that the white people should be removed. And I'm not going to get into the rights and wrongs of that. And I do see some reasoning behind their logic. The problem is the local tribe in South Africa, from what I understand, are the Bantu tribe. But the Bantus were native way after the white people arrived in South Africa. Apparently, the white South Africans have been there for 400 years, and the Bantus have only been there for, say, 200 or 100 years. So whilst you're saying need to kick out the white South Africans, they were actually there before the Bantu South Africans who are there now. Now, don't quote me on that. I'm not sure that's entirely 100% correct, but you see the point I'm making, and that even within that theory of, you know, Africa belongs to blacks, well, even the black Bantus were there after the white South Africans. So who has a better claim to be African? And I think this is the same confusion with the Israel thing, because there's claims that, you know, the Zionist Jews are not the original Jews from Israel, so they don't have a right to land. And I get that. Whilst I am against all the Jew hatred, I do understand, you know, as Christopher Hitchens has said, that the Zionist project is a bit of a strange project. But back to the point of my video in the Civ-nat v Ethno nationalists, now that I've clarified all that. I believe the best position, I believe this is what Tommy Robinson and a lot of so-called Civ-nat, accuse Paul Thorpe of being a Civ-nat as well, many others. But I believe that our position is, or I believe the correct position should be, that nations should maintain probably 90 to 95% homogeneity of the native people, and that you allow a small percentage of migration who will then successfully assimilate. And that when that happens, everything is fine. The problem we've had in the UK, for example, is we've had way too much migration. And not only that, the clear negative effects can be seen. So London is no longer majority English. And if London was an amazing place and it was clean, tidy, zero crime, and everything was amazing, everybody happy, getting along, these so-called multiculturalists may have a point. But the more diverse London has become, and Birmingham, the worse they have got. The more degeneracy, the more violent crime, the more knife crime, the more rapes. Everything has gone to hell in a handbasket. Whereas 60 odd years ago, when it was pretty much majority English, or it was completely majority English, there was barely any crime. You had zero knife crime, and it was a safe city for the most part, and a high trust society. So that, as I said, the 90 to 95% rule with good migration is a good point. The problem I have with the ethno-nationalists, and these are the ones accusing people like Tommy and I suppose myself, just because we don't hate good migrants, like it seems like unless you're against all migration, they think that you're some kind of sellout and stupid. You agree with open borders and all that, but it's a load of nonsense. And the interesting thing is when you hold the ethnos to the same standards as that they hold the civnats to, they get angry. So I would say to them, well, you believe in completely closed borders and you're going to deport every single non-ethnic English person. They get angry to say, oh, how can you accuse us of such extreme positions? When that's what they accuse us as civnats of. I'm not taking the position of wide open borders. I'm just saying I'm happy to welcome good migrants and I would not deport any good migrants. But the ethnos will literally be on Twitter attacking good migrants. Someone like Momus Najmi, yeah? Momus Najmi is ethnically Pakistani, and he's an ex-Muslim who came to the UK, or came to England because he wanted to live in England, and he has been fighting for England. He is well assimilated. He is culturally English. He follows the same cultural values as the English people, and he's married a Western woman, and he is what I would deem a well assimilated migrant who I would welcome. But the ethno, or the hardcore ethnos on X, someone like Steve Laws, was incredibly rude to Momus and said to Momus made a post about how he's so proud to be in England, and Steve Laws commented, quote tweeted, saying, it's a shame you're going to be deported, something along those lines. And then there was a debate. Momus replied as well, saying, well, why are you going to deport me? I'm trying to fight for England. And basically saying that this is why people shouldn't vote for the Homeland Party, because they take an extreme position. And I completely agree with Momus, and that people like Steve Laws are morons because they believe essentially that all foreigners should be deported. If he wants Momus deported, as he said on the quote tweet, deport, shame you're going to be deported. That's what he said. He even said, I actually don't mind you, but it's a shame we're going to have to deport you. So what he's essentially saying is we're going to deport all foreigners. If you can't keep the best of the migrants, such as Momus, that means you're going to deport everyone. And this is things that they always say. When they attack the civnats, they're essentially saying, you don't agree that we should deport all people. And when I reply to these sort of people who are in the Homeland Party, I'm saying, well, how can I support you? You believe in deporting the good migrants such as Momus. They say, that's not our position. Go and look at our remigration agenda. But I go, hold on. I've checked your remigration agenda, and your remigration agenda, a policy, is virtually similar to my opinion as a civnat, in terms of we need to deport all the illegals, all the enemies of the country, all migrants who come here who refuse to assimilate and who are detrimental to our society. They need to go. That's the position that all sensible people have. And when we say that, and we also say that, yeah, but we're going to keep all the good migrants, and the good migrants are welcome, like Momus. When we say that, the ethnos say, no, they need to go. Deport, 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 even the good ones. So you're contradicting your own migration policy. So when we accuse you of being extreme, you say, no, we're not extreme, check our migration policy. But then when we say, well, no, that's the thing that we agree with, you say, no, we don't agree with you because you need to deport Momus and the good migrants, if you see what I'm getting at. So their words are contradicting their own policy. So whilst you're saying, no, we're actually quite sensible, you're not, because you're saying deport all foreigners. And that is an extreme position that I completely disagree with. I believe that's just as stupid as open borders. We don't need open borders, and we don't need closed borders where we deport every single migrant who's come into the country, who's not ethnically English. You need a sensible policy, and this is something I've even seen Momus talk about. I agree completely with him that England should maintain 90 to 95% ethnically English, but also allow for good assimilation, people such as Momus. And whilst there is a point that if the country has 25% well assimilated migrants, that's still way down on the 90. Well, what we would say is that with time, we would gradually encourage the ethnically English people to have more babies. And with time, because the borders would be closed and we'd stop all this illegals and bad migration, with time, that 20% of assimilated migrants would gradually move back up to 90 to 95% ethnically English, especially when the good migrants, let's say that, good migrants have married an English woman. Those kids are going to be ethnically English, and then they're going to marry into English women when they grow up, and that's how that percentage would gradually creep back up to the 90 to 95%. It doesn't need to be done an extreme way of, oh, we're just going to deport every non-white ethnically English person. It's a stupid policy, and that's why I don't want anything to do with the hardcore ethnos. And there are ethno-nationalists who are sensible, and there are civnats who are sensible, and they come up to this, I call it an ethno-civnat position. And I do think some of these hardcore ethnos are actually somewhat dangerous, because they are, I know that the government and people like to accuse everybody of being far right, and obviously that is stupid, but I do believe there are some extreme far right people who have this position that we need to deport all all non-ethnically English people, which is stupid. They have this obsession with hating the Jews, and they seem to love Hitler. And they do videos, saying, oh, Hitler was right, sort of like some of the crap that Kanye West comes out with. But I believe these people are dangerous. And I've seen people like Nick Fuentes, they hold this position. If they got the hands of power, I do not believe they could be trusted at all. And this is how people like the Nazis and Hitler ended up killing a load of innocent, not just Jews, but many other people, even many other white Slavs and disabled people. It wasn't even necessarily just the Jews they killed. Like people like Kanye West needs to understand that Hitler believes that Kanye West is inferior because he's black. And even Hitler even believed other white people were inferior to like German and English Anglo-Saxon white people. When what Hitler missed out was is that Aryan is not to do with physical race necessarily, it's to do with your spiritual power. And that the true Aryans are those who are close to God and who are born again in Christ and who have a evolved soul. So I don't believe that Aryan is a race. I believe someone like Momus is an Aryan man, despite being Pakistani. It's a quality of the spirit. And that's how Aryan used to be, because it came from the ancient spiritual wisdoms. And in even Buddhism, they had the Aryan symbol, but the Aryan symbol is to represent spiritual purity and a spiritual race, not a physical race. So any white people or black people who claim that that's the superior race, they're stupid. The superior spiritual race are those who are born again of Christ. And ultimately, I suppose if I could have a country, I would deport Steve Laws and keep Momus, because Momus is an Aryan spiritual race, whereas someone like Steve Laws is spiritually immature and a moron. And that if Steve Laws was born as a Muslim, Pakistani, he'd be one of the radical Muslims saying, we're the best, Islam is the great, disbelievers are morons. It's a quality of your soul. Is your soul of the quality to transcend your earthly position and your egotistical race? So whilst I do the Christ of England, I'm not overly obsessed with my ethnicity and race. My obsession is with Christ and bringing the spirit of Christ to England. So the Christ of England is not about being English, it's about serving Christ for the English people. But if the English people are doing evil, then I will stand against them and I will stand with Christ first and foremost. Okay, so I think you get the idea of my video. I've whittled on for a while. Usual stuff. If you agree with what I'm talking about, come and join the movement, because we are here to serve Christ and the English people. So subscribe to the channel to join and support us for now. Like the video if you like it. Share it with as many people in England as you can to clarify a sensible position on migration. And God bless everybody today. Goodbye.